Thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce FFRF's 2018 Freethought Heroine. Saira Haider is an American writer, speaker, and activist. Born in Pakistan and raised in Texas, Saira spent her early youth as a practicing Muslim. She left her faith in her late teens and later co-founded Ex-Muslims of North America, and as she may tell you, that was not easy. The co-founder of Ex-Muslims of North America, Mohammed Syed, is also here today. Ex-Muslims of North America advocates for the acceptance of religious dissent and works to create local support communities for those who have left Islam. In addition to atheism, Saira is passionate about civil liberties and women's rights. She has spoken at many conferences and events and has appeared in a range of television programs, radio shows, and podcasts. Saira directs Ex-Muslims of North America's Life Beyond Faith mini documentary series, a series of video portraits of ex-Muslim atheists and humanists. Saira is also heading Ex-Muslims of North America's Normalizing Dissent tour and travels the United States and Canada to cover a range of issues related to apostasy in Islam. Her work with the Normalizing Dissent tour has been covered by the BBC, Slate, and Quillite magazine. She is currently a columnist for Free Inquiry magazine. Please join me in welcoming Saira Haider.
Well, thank you to everyone at Freedom from Religious Foundation for recognizing me with this award. I truly am very grateful and humbled. I also want to take this time to thank FFRF for the numerous occasions in which they have assisted us here at Ex-Muslims of North America. On multiple occasions, FFRF has helped us fight. Is this a little better? On multiple occasions, FFRF has helped us fight discrimination against ex-Muslims, and we are very grateful for their counsel and for their aid. In addition, earlier this year, FFRF also gave us a grant to fight a false allegation against an ex-Muslim teenager who was in very serious danger of honor violence. And again, for those of you who might not know me too well, in addition to the introduction, I'll introduce myself a little bit. I am the executive director of Ex-Muslims of North America. We work to mitigate the cost of apostasy and normalize dissent within Muslim communities. Over the last 5 years, we have worked to raise the profiles of ex-Muslims from what was once a truly invisible minority to what is beginning to be a force to be reckoned with. And so thank you again, Annie, Laurie, Dan Barker, and everyone at the FFRF for their steadfast support and for this great honor. And I've been thinking about that ever since I was told that I would be receiving this award, the concept of honor and what it means to have this kind of recognition. It's interesting because honor reflects as much on the values of those who give it as it does on the accomplishments of the honorees itself. And as it so happens, the very same achievements which bring me honor here today are those that have brought deep, unrelenting dishonor in the community in which I was raised. There are other speakers here with my background, many of them who are going to speak later here today. So this idea, hopefully by the end of it, won't be too unfamiliar to this audience. I was born in Pakistan and raised Muslim, and I come from a culture which highly values honor, particularly the honor of men. That wasn't meant to be a joke, but that's good. But this honor can be tarnished in many ways, particularly by the actions of your kin, especially female kin. And in this context, leaving the faith, choosing to walk away from God's path, to deny his word, is a truly disgraceful life choice. Walking from the faith is considered indistinguishable from walking away from morality itself. And to forsake God is to forsake goodness. It is inconceivable to many faithful that the choice one makes to leave religion might be one based in reason, that it might be an embrace of a different source of ethics rather than an abandonment of all that is good and right in the world. And it's due to this misconception of the nature of disbelief that I believe why apostates in particular, those who walk away from faith, are routinely deprived of basic human dignities, and in the case of ex-Muslims, even the right to life. While all non-believers are considered morally compromised in one way or another, it is apostates, those of us who have supposedly already seen the light, who have chosen instead to refuse God, and who are cast as the most corrupt. We are as near to villainy as an ideological choice can get you. So it is no surprise that the decision to leave the faith, particularly in Muslim communities, is often met with extreme hostility, even violence. Numerous public opinion polls demonstrate the hatred for ex-Muslims throughout the Muslim world. Majorities in Egypt, Jordan, Pakistan, a variety of others believe ex-Muslims should be killed for their disbelief, but one does not need to solely rely on hard data to gauge the alarming levels of intolerance for apostasy. Because across the Muslim world, vigilante mobs threaten those who leave the faith, and too often family members may be the ones who someone has to fear most. And in the West, it really is the actions of family members, whether that be shunning, abuse, or violence, that looms most heavily on the minds of those who leave the faith. However, even if you are lucky enough to have a family which chooses not to hurt or to disown you, it is taken for granted that you should have enough decency and tact to stay silent about your lack of faith, to keep your immorality to yourself. You can choose to do otherwise, but it would come at a high cost, an extreme shame and dishonor, which will cast a shadow over not just yourself, but any relative or associate of yours. This is why honor violence exists and persists. A family with a dishonorable member is pressured to take action, anything to stop the bad behavior of their kin, lest this bad action or behavior of the relative casts shame on the family and of the community. Honor violence is, on some level, truly self-preservation. So it is in this sense that it's quite disorienting to find myself honored for the very same actions which I find nothing but great dishonor in my former faith community. And it proves, truly, if nothing else, that the malleability of our societies. It is a testament to our capacity to evolve, to progress, and to be the masters of our cultures and communities, not merely to be mastered by them. We are cultural beings, but that doesn't mean we must only be passively shaped by the contexts we are born into, but that we can too shape our contexts and communities. But I know it doesn't always feel that way. Faith-based communities in particular often have coercive elements within them, elements which are often most strongly enforced on women. And in conversations about choice and about freedom, the social costs of deviance can be difficult to factor in, because unlike physical coercion or clear laws which restrict practices, social forces are not often as visible or easily quantifiable. As some feminist scholars have noted, religious convictions of right and wrong and the social pressure to conform have played an acutely devastating role in the lives of women. And in my personal experience and that of many other ex-Muslim women I know, our mothers have often as much or even a stronger hand to play in our oppression. And this was true for me. My mother didn't just disagree with my religious choice, she did, but she enforced my behavior because she herself would incur a great cost, social cost, for the way that I misbehaved. And in this way, social pressures throttle free thought in a truly insidious manner. And this is easy for them to do because they're difficult to crystallize, to study, to generalize, because of the multifaceted nature of social pressure and coercion. And it is insidious because even we are not accurate reporters of what is happening to us and why it is happening. We often cannot understand the forces that are playing out inside of us, that are warring inside of us, and we lie to ourselves to feel better about our own inability or even our own unwillingness to act. Sometimes we lie to feel powerful in a powerless situation. Other times we lie to preserve the self-deception that we are good actors. I'll give you an example. When I was a young Muslim woman, I parroted the ideas which, in the light of a critical outlook, are contradictory and even ridiculous. I thought my modesty was entirely a free choice that I was making, and I was prepared to defend it. For the sake of this comforting rationalization, I ignored all the obvious ways in which my choice was influenced very strongly, you could even say coerced, by my upbringing. I couldn't be modest even if I had wanted to, so I allowed myself the intellectual mercy of rationalizing a choice I hadn't made as a choice that I would have made anyway. My family was led by a reluctant patriarch, for which I am really grateful. My father's tolerant by nature, and so he really is unwilling to enact force upon those who are weaker than him. And this allowed me the space I needed to explore ideas bigger than those I was raised with. And although I had to abide by standard Muslim dress and behavioral codes, I was not restricted intellectually by my family, not directly anyway. I was formed by the society I grew up in, and I took for granted the truth of the claims made in the Quran because those were the beliefs of the people I trusted most in the world, my parents. And if there's one message I wish to emphasize here today, it is that literal physical restrictions of acting a certain way or even thinking freely are but one of many. Now, there is such a thing as people who are born skeptics, and I was skeptical of the fact that these people exist, but I've met a few. There are people out there for whom skepticism and doubt truly is a natural state. This is not something they have to work for. There are people who can manage to think without the interruptions of ego and think critically. But I think if we were to be honest, we know that the vast majority of us do not fit this bill at all. And we might like to believe that our reasoning faculties function independently, that our emotions and actions are a response to deliberate and careful thinking and reasoning, but that in itself really is a self-assuring deception. Too often our reason does not act as the driver in our life, but instead it plays assistant to other emotions and ego-preserving desires. I fear that we, the people in this room, free thinkers, people who consider themselves of the intellectual sort, are actually particularly vulnerable to this kind of self-reassurance because we can do it so well. It's too easy to imagine that because we have left faith-based dogma behind, because we can now look back objectively at religious faith and analyze it and dissect it, and its effects on social function, we fool ourselves into thinking that we might not be susceptible to similar kinds of behavior now. And Salman Rushdie mentioned yesterday about his fears of a secular form of religion, of a regress to the instincts of heresies, blasphemies, and inquisitions, and those are fears that I share as well. And in fact, I think it's very dangerous to presume that we are more likely to spot dogma because when we experience it now, because we have seen it before, particularly when it involves social pressure. We may have recognized and conquered one form of dogma, one form of rationality. However, this says little about our resistance to other forms of unreason. Remember that although we consider reason to be adverse to we consider religion to be adverse to at least some forms of rationality, the religious layman thinks that his faith is quite reasonable. And just as we understand rational religious apologism to be post hoc reasoning in one form or another, we should assume that we too are capable of employing this reasoning more often than we would like to acknowledge. We are, for better or for worse, influenced by our social nature, and this distorts our judgment and choices we make. We are more influenced by our desire to be seen as good than to actually do good. And I bring us to this point because as an ex-Muslim, I routinely find myself frustrated with the ways in which we in the broader United States engage with Islam and Muslim practices. And I'll give one example, and it may be a little silly, but I think it highlights what I'm trying to say. I see thoughtless, countless celebrations of the hijab, the Muslim head veil. I see depictions of smiling, triumphant women in headscarves, and I see that as something that is more commonplace today than they were 10 or even 5 years ago. And I know that the intent of these depictions to frame the hijab as a feminist choice is, of course, a way to stand up for the rights of minorities. But I do think that in these ham-fisted attempts at appearing tolerant and diverse, we gloss over very real oppression and sexism in conservative Muslim communities. I remember in the 2016 Olympics, and I think most of you will know what I'm talking about, there was there was a time where there was so much coverage, like wall to wall, over the first hijabi Muslim woman who ended up winning a bronze medal for team fencing. I remember gushing headlines and shows who highlighted Ibtihaj Muhammad, that's her name, as this triumphant Muslim woman, victorious in an Islamophobic society. But what was glossed over? Fencing was, in fact, the only choice left to her. While she played a variety of sports growing up, Ibtihaj was forced to participate in fencing because it was a sport in which her body and hair would remain covered. And while many Muslim women are not allowed to participate in sports at all due to concerns of modesty, I feel like this aspect of the story was entirely erased. Further, she wasn't the only Muslim athlete at the Olympics that year. There was another woman, Dalila Muhammad, who ran hurdles for the US team, and she actually placed higher. She got an individual gold. But Dalila did not wear the hijab, and her story was not as politically useful, so you didn't hear as much about her. Every freethinker from a Muslim background will tell you this, that they feel to some extent abandoned by the broader progressive left. How they feel that people in the progressive left have chosen immediate political urgencies over a greater struggle. This past month, the European Court of Human Rights, for example, upheld an Austrian decision to fine a woman. Her crime was to speak about the Prophet Muhammad's life and describe his marriage with a 9-year-old child as pedophilia. And regardless of the validity of this claim, the fact that a European court is educating on issues of religious sensibility is in essence reintroducing blasphemy laws, and is something that should be concerning us deeply. A month before, a conservative British politician defended a woman's right to wear a face covering, a niqab, and in doing so, he also mocked the concept. His message was, I think this is ridiculous, but they should be allowed to be ridiculous. But he was deemed a hate monger for what was ostensibly defending a woman's right to choose things that he himself despised because he said that he despised them. Rather than moving towards greater nuance in the way that we address challenges of this faith, I believe we are moving further away from it. And while here I'm speaking specifically about Islam, this is only one avenue in which there is deeply troubling polarization of the discourse into black and white choices. And I'd wager many of you here know what I'm talking about. Many of you who might have felt, as I have, a strong pressure to be more simplified, even tribal, in the way we think and the way we speak with others like us, particularly in this political atmosphere, as the social discourse is resembling all the time more of a battlefield. And what happens in times of war? No matter who we are, how peaceful we are by our nature, we will feel an urge to rally around the flag. And most of us will not be able to resist this urge. We collapse ourselves into one-dimensional figures because in a moment of crisis, when the stakes seem to be the highest, we are asked to fall in line or to risk dooming our side. Now is not the time to ask questions, we are told. Now is not the time for introspection, nor for criticism of our own side, because this is war. But I urge you to resist this urge to conform. By this time at this incredible conference, and increasingly towards the end of the day today, you will meet more people who truly exemplify courage, and many of you will come up to them and you might have already done so, and then after the conference to thank them for their work. And as someone who occasionally receives these comments, I have to say that these are appreciated more than I can put into words. But there is something that you can do that is more meaningful than any note of thanks. If you see someone that inspires you, honor them not with thanks or with applause, but also with allyship. Tell them that they will not be alone because you will stand with them, that you will place your skin in the game as they have, and you will bear the costs of failure along with them. And in your life, where and when you find an overwhelming urge to correct a wrong, to highlight a misconception, to stand up even to your own team, you will do so, and that you will not choose to be bullied or scared into silence. And it will feel difficult and unnatural because it is difficult and unnatural, but it is no less worth doing because of it. Thank you for this great honor, and thank you to FFRF.